Welcome to Over the Line, the podcast. I'm your host, Dan Bland. Today we're on episode 7. I have a really good friend here with me today, Brownstown entrepreneur, Paul Borden. Thanks for being on here.
Hey, Dan. Thanks for having me. Certainly happy to be lucky number 7, hopefully, on the podcast. Big shoes to fill in the first 6, but we'll see where we get to.
We've had a good time with it. I took a week or 2 off. This is the longest we've been between podcasts. And I've kind of got to realize how many people are listening to it because I've kind of gotten some grief that we took a little time off. So it's getting nice outside. I'm getting back to doing a little more surveying outdoors. And so I'm a little bit behind, but we've got several scheduled over the next 2 weeks. You were very high on the list, and so I'm very thankful that you're here. We're going to talk about some of my 4 favorite topics. Family, small business, a little bit of golf, and a little bit of bourbon. 4 things I love to talk about, and I know you love to talk about. So
those are 4 great things.
I think we're going to have some fun. So we usually start these things off kind of with the same flow, the same pattern. People want to know who Paul Borden is. So Paul, tell me a little bit about yourself as far as where you're from, how you got to Brownstown. Tell me a little bit about your family.
Sure. I grew up, actually, most of my childhood out in Surprise, so about 7 miles from Brownstown here. Surprise, Acme area, working at Red Brush Park. I don't know if you moved to town soon enough to experience Red Brush Park or not, but all the local people around here will certainly know what I'm talking about. Actually, when I was born, or in 73 to 75, I lived about a block from here, just right behind Dairy Queen in the little square house until we moved out to Surprise. So spent most of my time out there, went to Seymour High School, graduated from Seymour in 91, went on to Ball State for 4 years, and really those 4 years was the only time that I haven't lived in Jackson County. Married to Leanne for 30 years this year.
30 years.
Yeah. Have 3 children, Cole, Seth, and Kaylee. Cole just moved back from Phoenix. He's 28 now. He's working for us at NITAC again, which is great to have him back. Seth is married to Addie Wilkerson, and Seth is 24 now. Both of those boys, I was fortunate enough being a big sports guy that both of those boys were able to play some college baseball and getting to travel around and keep up with them. It was a lot of fun. Seth and Addie are expecting a baby.
Wow, congratulations.
So we are having a gender reveal this weekend, and I think that just became public about a week ago. So certainly excited about that, becoming a grandpa for the first time. And Kaylee, who is 20 now, she's down at UK. She will start her pharmacy program in the fall.
That's awesome. Everybody's doing well. So tell me how you and Leanne met.
Sure. So Leanne and I went to high school together, and she probably absolutely hated me as much as any kid in the school. Went to middle school as well and played in the band together. And I played saxophone, and she played clarinet. And she was in front of me, and I was one of the goofy kids, always trying to do something funny. And I'm sure that she thoroughly just wanted to turn around and smack me most days. But
so you pestered her? You just,
oh, yeah, absolutely.
Was a pest long enough that she said, yeah, I'll go out with this guy?
Absolutely. So I think our junior year, actually, in high school, we started dating and made it through college and got married. We graduated college in 95 and got married in September of 95.
So you went to college together?
We did. And we both went to Ball State. I thoroughly enjoyed Ball State. I don't think she was the biggest fan of college as I was, but had a great time up there.
You know, my wife and I talk about that, Paul. We went to college together, and my wife and I had 2 completely different college experiences. Both of us enjoyed it, but I was a little bit more into the social scene. So when we sit and talk about college, I think I reminisce and have a little bit more fun and have a little bit better experience than she did. But I know what it's like to date through college and find the one that you're going to marry, and we went down that same path.
Yeah. And it seems like several people I know that have done that and been together that long, they're still together. I mean, you've had Tanya and Mason on, same thing. I mean, they've been together forever.
Yeah.
So they're at that 30-year mark, I believe, also.
I think sometimes it's easy to judge kids that maybe you think, maybe they got together too young or married too young. I know just as many people that got married young that have been married 30, 40 years as I do that it didn't go well, So I don't put a lot of stock on that sometimes, that maybe people are married too young. I know a lot of people that have had a lot of success from marrying young. So you mentioned the boys playing baseball, and I know you're a big sports guy. And I think for the longest time, that's before I really got to know you and become friends. I think that's what when I thought of Paul Borden, I thought sports dad, because I saw you at every sports function. It didn't matter there for a while. I saw you at football games, or I saw you at basketball games or baseball games. And so I think before you and I got to know each other, in my mind, you were a sports dad. And that was a great thing. I knew you enjoyed it, but you spent a lot of time on a lot of baseball fields and football fields and traveling sports. And what was that like?
Oh, it was a lot of fun. Cole started playing baseball probably when he was 5 years old, and Seth jumping in right behind him. And so, unfortunately for Kaylee, she grew up with a lot of her youth at a baseball park. And when it came time for her, the age-wise, to play baseball or softball, she was like, "Nah, I don't think so. I've done my time at the baseball park already." So she tried for 1 year. She actually played baseball for 1 year and spent most of the time cheering for her friends. Instead of actually playing baseball, Bryce Neal was on the other team, so she would stand in the outfield and Bryce would get a good hit and she'd be cheering, "Yay, Bryce, yay, Bryce." "Oh, I got to get that ball and throw it back? Oh, okay, hang on a second."
Yeah, and so I'm sure you did a lot of travel sports back in the day too, or was that a thing then? I don't know when that kind of blew up.
So it wasn't probably as big as it is today. Cole started playing travel baseball probably when he was, I'm going to guess, 10, 11 years old. But we still played at the rec league at the park, always, all the way through. Both boys did, and played all the way through, and they did travel as well. But yeah, we were fortunate enough to go play with some really good players. That some of those kids have gone on, and one of the boys plays for the Padres now, that Cole played with growing up, and he's played up at the Brownstown Park many times. And at the time frame when they were little kids, he was a big kid then already, so he's hitting it in Mike Tormone's trailer park on the lower field, like just launching it. Great kid, great family. But yeah, we really enjoyed getting to travel around and chase the kids around. And Kaylee didn't play baseball, but she did play basketball and volleyball, played some tennis in middle school, and have enjoyed watching her play as well. And she was very successful in basketball and volleyball as well.
Did you do much coaching as the kids were growing up? And
I always coached baseball. I definitely was not smart enough about basketball to really do anything except I'll keep the book or the clock. That's my slot and stay in that lane. But definitely coached a lot of baseball growing up, and coached Seth up until about a travel team we did with Seth out of Bloomington that was split between some Brownstown kids and some Bloomington kids until he was probably 16 or 17 years old. Then got out of it and just enjoyed watching.
So I think, a lot of people know Paul Borden through your business. And as a small business owner myself, a lot of times people just know me through the business. And that's fine. But a lot of people know you from NITEC. And we've had some small business owners on here, and I love to hear their stories and their paths because, I tell people, you don't just wake up one day and start a successful business. There's a process to this. And most people start off with 2 or 3 jobs or 4 jobs, and there's a path to get to where you are. So I want to talk a little bit about how NITEC got to be where it is, but I want to talk about the beginning of Paul Borden's career. So, some of the jobs you had, and then maybe work into where you are today.
Sure. So as I mentioned before, I did go to Ball State, and I have an accounting degree from Ball State, and started out I had many jobs leading up to that point, through my youth. Working at Red Brush Park, I was a lifeguard, and actually drove a big paddle boat, a 52-passenger paddle boat that they put a 16-year-old kid driving. I'm sure that probably wouldn't be allowed today. But taking 50 people across the lake, and yeah, I'm 16. It's all safe. No worries.
We share that in common. I was a lifeguard.
Oh, really?
Yeah. 2-3 years in high school, and I think the first year of college. So I was just a scrawny kid, and I just always thought, man, I hope somebody doesn't actually drown because I'm never going to be able to pull them out. But it was a lot of fun. I'll tell you that.
Oh, absolutely. Had a great time. A lot of friends I still talk to that I worked with out there at the time, and it was a wonderful time. And
Red Brush is such a unique place. I remember, so my wife and I moved to Jackson County in the late 90s. We got married in 98. I think I was here beginning of 98. is when I got to Jackson County, and we went out to Red Brush. They used to have Schneck, used to have summer get-togethers and company outings out there, and man, what a cool place that is. I don't know that it's kind of a hidden secret to some degree. I don't know that a lot of people in Jackson County know that it's out there and what all is there, but man, what a great place that is.
It was a great place growing up around here for us to work as young kids and, and just learn, you get up, go to work. I think we made like $3.30 an hour. And like 4th of July week was a huge week out there. So, we'd get 50 or 60 hours that week. And you might make $200. Yeah. And we were like, all right.
Well, yeah, and it's close to home, too.
Oh, absolutely. For me, living where I lived, it was like 3 miles. So, and a lot of the folks that worked out there were really close in that area and grew up out in there. There's a lot of Brownstown kids that worked out there, a lot of Seymour kids, but most of those Seymour kids were out in the Cortland area. So most of us did go to Cortland School. So it was great. It was a great place to work and had a lot of fun.
From there, you get out of Ball State, you get your accounting degree.
I went to work as a cost accountant it was called Costco at the time, but it's Durrell Juvenile now in Columbus. Worked with some great people up there, but didn't take me very long to realize that I did not want to be an accountant. I would go to work and I would get there at 8 o'clock and I would start watching the clock. And I'm like, all right, 8 more hours to go and I get to go home. This is great. 7 more hours and 30 minutes now. I can go home. So I did that for about a year and a half. Like I said, the folks that I worked with were great, learned a lot from them, but it wasn't for me. Had a good opportunity. The lady that was in charge of IT for the computers there left and went to the hospital in Columbus, and I kind of talked my way into that job. So that's how the IT side of things really got going for me.
So still at a pretty early age then. You were getting into the IT industry at a fairly young age. This isn't something that, you had a little bit of time in accounting, I guess, but quickly switched. So it's something that started at an early age.
Yeah, I was probably 24 at the time when I made the switch. I had an associate's degree in computer science from Ball State, but really it was programming and stuff that, honestly, I've probably never used any of the skill set that I used from that associate's degree for programming since then. It's just not a field that I wanted to be in necessarily. I really like the hardware, really like the networking side of things instead of the development side of things. So I got into that job at that time. I think we had about 50 computers at Costco that were actually PCs, maybe one server. I think I left there. I was there for another 3.5 years. Left there as an IT manager with them, which I was still really young. We had probably at that juncture 300 machines. I had 3 people that worked for me and supporting 15 plus servers at locations in Georgia, one down in Austin, Indiana, a couple locations in Mexico, Cartersville, Georgia. So I grew quick with the job and just really enjoyed it. That's where I knew I wanted to be.
So from that first job in IT, where did that go from there? Did you start thinking about maybe someday this is something I want to go out on my own? When did that thought process start?
So I left Costco and I went to Ice and Drivetrain down in Crothersville and went in as a network administrator for them. And so I was working there I've been there a year probably, and my dad owned his own business. He retired early from Cummins, and we had a business installing satellite dishes. So we did Prime Stars, we did Dish Network. Dad even had done the really big satellite dishes you might see out and about still that are like 12 feet around. But most people turn those maybe to a bird bath or a big umbrella now. But so I'd been in that self-employed world at home. So I seen what Dad did. I enjoyed it. So I thought, you know what? Maybe I ought to take a chance and do this. So I started thinking about that while I was down there.
What did you learn from seeing your dad run a small business? What were some of the trials that you saw your dad maybe go through with trying to run a small business that have helped you even today?
I'll tell you the one thing that I seen was Dad was still working at Cummins at the time. So, he would work a 8-10 hour shift. He would work overtime when he could. And then a lot of times he would be on second shift maybe or third shift. And then he would come home and he would run the small business on the side. So he worked his butt off. 8 to 10 there, maybe 4 on the other business once he got home every single day. So just the work ethic that he really instilled in me, I think, was probably the big thing for that. And then, the opportunity to, from an income standpoint, was greater overall. I knew the the top end, or the ceiling was greater overall. Certainly wasn't greater when you start out, that's for sure.
I understand that, and I don't think that's something that gets talked about. There is all the stress and struggle of a small business, but the reality is of small business, or when you work for yourself, you're self-employed, is the harder you work, the more effort you put in, you can be rewarded. It's not a situation where you go work, an 8 to 5 job and you make X amount of dollars regardless of your efforts. And so for people like yourself, who's willing to sacrifice, willing to put in the hard work, the time and the effort, and go through that, small business can be very rewarding.
Absolutely. And I'm not saying there's anything bad about that 8 to 5 either. There's definitely a lot of benefits to having that 8 to 5, because when you get off at 5 o'clock and you go home, most people are able to say, work's over, I'm home now.
Yeah.
And that'll be there tomorrow. And as you know, and I know, sometimes when you get home, it's, okay, we'll have some dinner and hang out with the kids for a little bit, and then work starts again. So, there's definitely a lot more that goes into it than most people see.
Yep. And I think every small business owner that we have on here will sing that same song of, there are some rewards, obviously, but the stress, the sacrifice, all that comes along with it. I think it's really cool that you got to see your dad do that at a young age.
Yeah, it was great. It was. A little bit about my dad. My dad grew up in Bedford, and so we have a lot of family down in the Bedford area. And he lived on a farm, had 2 brothers and a sister, and he quit school at 9th grade to work on the farm, and was able to start working at Cummins, and definitely took care of us very well. But his math skills were great. He was able to run the business side of things and the numbers and stuff like that, and it was really impressive to see. And then he got into the stock market. So he's trading options and doing stuff and really doing a lot better, honestly, financially, from that than he ever did at Cummins. And I just looked back at that and think, you know what, for a 9th grade education, he did wonderful. And took care of my mom, and, after Dad passed away, Mom never had to worry about money or anything, and that definitely set her up good, and all of us.
Yeah, it reminds me of that saying, scared money don't make money.
Yeah, that's very true.
There's got to be some risk to the reward. When we were talking about family going back and forth, you are one of how many children? How many brothers and sisters do you have?
So I'm the only child of my mom and my dad.
Oh, okay.
They were both married previously. So I have 2 brothers and a sister on my mom's side, and I have 3 brothers and a sister from my dad's side. So there was quite a few of us.
Yeah, I didn't know that. Your parents were from Lawrence County, is that correct?
My mom was actually from here in Jackson County. She grew up in Surprise, was, born in Surprise in a house out there. Okay. Back in, that time frame. She was born in 1940. Obviously a lot more common then than it is today. So I grew up with my mom's side of the family for the most part. My dad's side of the family stayed in Bedford with their mom, but, I was able to see them several times a year when I was younger. And then as we got older, probably not as much.
Yeah.
But I do still keep in touch with them.
And to just kind of circle back, learning from your dad about small business, and then when did you say, okay, you know what, I've got a little experience in the IT market, I think I'm going to take the leap?
So I was very lucky. Leanne was working for, at the time, I think Schwartz Pharmaceutical before they became Lynette, and they had changed names several times, but she had worked there for several years. And fortunate enough that she was behind me and said, if you want to do it, give it a try. So I talked to the guy that hired me down at Ison, and timing was perfect. This is one of those stories that just worked out perfect, and his name was Archie Capel. I said, Archie, I just want to let you know, I think I'm gonna leave and start my own business. And he's like, well, that's great timing, because they're transferring me to Terre Haute to build Ison Brake and Chassis. I'm your first customer. Wow. So he's like, pack your bags, come on, we're going to go build this plant. So I loaded up, and I spent several days, a week up in Terre Haute working with Archie. And when they started that plant, they were in a little bitty office, like you would see in downtown Brownstown here, and they've grown that to, I'm not sure the size of that plant now, but it's not as big as Seymour Ison, but it's probably as big as Crothersville's. Yeah. So, and I was able to help build that plant, and so great start. I helped drivetrain when I left drivetrain. Tried to hire someone to replace me. That person didn't work out, and they called me back, and it's like, hey, what do you think about coming back and consulting for us? So even though I left Ison, still do a lot of work for Ison today, and so I've never really left Ison.
Yeah. Always have those connections.
Yeah, and it's been a great company to work with.
And connections are so important in business. The friendships you make, the connections you make, the people you meet are so important. Started out the same way, leap of faith, behind every good man's a good woman. My wife was the same way. She had a lot of patience, and I took that leap. And a real interesting story I had just the same way. I had a client, just boom, put his faith in me, and away it went. So you and I talked a little bit about, before we turned the recorder on, about mentors that we've both had. And I know from my standpoint, I wouldn't be where I am today after 22, 23 years in business without some really good mentors from a business side, from a friendship side, advice side, and a client side. I've had some clients that were great mentors. And then I've had a lot of business friends that I've leaned on. Tell me about that, because I know we all have them.
I really think that's the same for almost all of us. I think you'll find that anyone in small business owners, medium business owners in their starting stages have had that person to lean back on. We talk about, in one of my peer groups, we talk about one hand up and one hand down. So you have that person above you that you can reach out to, but also always have that hand down for that person that's looking for that answer to start their business or to just needs help moving something to the next stage. So I think that's very important for us all of us that have had some success, to try to give that back and bring that next generation business owner along. But certainly mentors, same with me, customer-wise. I was fortunate enough to start doing some work for Royalty Roofing, probably in 2000, I'm guessing 2003, 2004 timeframe. NITAC's been around since '02, and watching them grow has just been absolutely amazing. And, being able to lean on Andy's ear a little bit every now and then. He's always been very forthcoming and helping me along with anything that I'd ever ask him. So it's been great to have him there, as well as several other people. But as you talked about having those relationships, we play in golf league, but it's you and me and Jade Peters and Jeff Neal, all small business owners. So while we're out there having a good time golfing, we're always asking each other, what do you think about this? Or what do you think about that? And, there's a lot of good stuff that comes from that.
Yeah, I've picked up a lot from you and from Jeff. And I guess I'll give Jade a little bit of credit.
Sorry, Jade, I'm number 7.
I don't want to give him too much credit, but yes.
You'll be on here someday, Jade.
We'll try to get him inside the top 25 on the podcast. He gives me a lot of grief about that. But one of the things when you talk about mentors that kind of strange for me is I've tried to, like you said, one hand up, one hand down, grabbing the person behind you, pulling them up. I have found that people are starting to call for some advice or bringing new people along, whether that's Colton Fleetwood through the new title company, or whether that's a new county surveyor like Tim Allen in Brown County. And so it has really been really cool to see that, because I remember when I was young and I was 2 arms up in the air. I was reaching for anybody, and I just felt like I needed somebody to grab me and pull me up. And now I kind of feel like I'm that one arm up, one arm down, and to kind of, share that with others and try to bring people along and see them get started, it's extremely rewarding.
Oh, absolutely. I think about 2 weeks ago, I was sitting in my office and someone came in the front door and Jill's like, there's someone up front to see you. And I'm like, all right. And she thought it was someone selling insurance or something, which is okay. Sorry, Jeff. But it was a guy that actually had an IT company that was just coming around the area and checking to see what services we had and see if maybe there was a match for him to help us out with something, or maybe even us to help him out with something. And been in business for maybe a year. Was from down around Pekin. I'm like, have a seat, let's talk.
Yeah.
So we sat and we talked for 30 minutes just about, some of the things that he opened up to me and was like, man, I'm really struggling with this and I don't know how to handle this or what I should do. And I'm like, let's talk about it. I've been there. And just to sit with him for 30 minutes was great. Had a really good time doing it.
You've built a successful business of your own, and I have seen the growth. And it just seems like every time I turn around, it looks like you're growing bigger and bigger. There's more trucks on the road. I see NITAC all over the place now, it seems like. And so I know the growth has been steady, but at the same time, does it feel like sometimes you're pulling the reins back on the horse, or do you feel like you're just letting the reins down and letting the horse run? How does it feel on the growth pattern of NITAC?
Well, it's really lots of horses running. It seems like, to be really honest, when I started out, it was me by myself. From a business size standpoint, we grew pretty good. I was able to grow the business up where I remember one of the first things I was able to buy, cash at a couple of years into the business. I was like, I'm going to buy a motorcycle and I'm going to write a check. And for me, I was like, that's really cool. I got enough money left over at the end of this year that I'm going to buy a motorcycle. And so that was great. But then we started to grow a little bit, and you add an employee. Then you're like, oh my gosh, now I got someone else. So I got to make sure my business is good enough that I can take care of them and their family. And in my mind, I was like, I never want more than 10 people. That's it. It's crazy to have more than that. I think we've been as high as 22. Currently, we're right at 20, counting Todd and myself. But honestly, one of the big turns that we had, Todd Bollinger is my business partner, and he bought in, and we doubled within probably a year. And we've just had a really nice growth trajectory since then.
And Todd's a smart guy. I've been around Todd a little bit. Just a great guy to just spend some time around and talk to. And I know he brings a lot to the table.
He does. Todd, we're kind of the two different people that work really well. I like to get up early. I get in there. I'm trying to get there before 7 every day. Todd may come in at 9, but I'll leave and I go home, and maybe I'm coming back through town at 6:30 or something like that. Todd's still there.
Yeah.
And Todd and I have worked some 24 to 30-hour shifts together back when we were really out in the field every day doing it ourselves. And he is go, go, go. Once he gets on something, there's no quit. So he would rather work that 30-hour shift instead of drive back the next day.
Yeah.
So let's get this done. So he's taught me a lot from that standpoint.
Yeah.
So.
And man, it takes a team.
It does.
Doesn't it? I mean, it kind of feels like whether you're talking about a sports team or a business team, man, it takes the right people.
One of the hardest things for me, I think, from a business standpoint, it was me working, I'm generating revenue. We brought another person on that was an IT person. They're generating revenue. When we hired that first admin person that is not making money that covers himself, and I was like, oh my goodness, what are we going to do? How are we going to generate enough revenue to help support this person too? Jill Nuss is our office manager. She's been with me, I think, for 16 years now. And I call her my work wife all the time, but she takes care of us all. So we got her in there, changed the game for us. I'm no longer dealing with the taxes, the payroll, the things that bothered me that I let slide. So I could focus more on the business itself, growing the business and stuff of that nature. So that was a hard hire for me.
Or the phone ringing constantly in your pocket.
So then we continued to grow, and now we got 6 people, 7 people, and Todd and I get together, and now we're at 12 people. Todd and I'll tell you the story about how the reason Todd and I got together here in just a minute, but probably the second biggest hire was the second non-income producing person. Maria Hunsley is on board as a project manager for us over our fiber group, and that freed Todd up. I mean, that's what Todd was spending day and night working on all the admin stuff, scheduling, and putting the job reports together and stuff. And making that leap allowed us to continue to grow. So that's one thing I would tell somebody, that it's hard to do, but it's one of those things where you wonder, can I afford to do this? But really, can you afford not to do this?
Yeah, that's great advice, especially when you're growing with what you and I would call overhead, an overhead workforce. When you're hiring people that aren't generating money, they're an overhead base. That's tough. That's a really tough decision.
It is. Just that causes your expense side. You're going to see that overhead number just double. People aren't cheap, but you got to have great people to be successful.
That's very true.
Let me jump back to Todd and I. So, Todd and I have known each other for years. We went to high school together. So we've known each other probably since 6th, 7th grade, whenever middle school was. Todd was working for Coakley, and he was their maintenance manager. And he left and went out on his own and was doing some things. I had NITEC going. We were doing some things. And Matt Reedy called me and says, hey, would you be interested in doing this fiber to the home project down in French Lick? I'm like, well, yeah. I've never done fiber. I have no idea how to do that. So I called Todd. Hey, you want to go together and do this? And he's like, yeah, that sounds great. Todd has no fiber experience or knowledge either.
Yeah.
So we jump on the internet, and we find a guy in Atlanta that actually works for the organization that writes some of the exams for the fiber optic certifications and stuff. And he does training. So we call him, it's like, hey, would you do some training for us? And he's like, yeah. So Todd and I jump in the car and we go to Atlanta for a weekend and learn how to do fiber in 2 days. Buy equipment from him, come back, head to French Lick. So we're going to do a fiber to the home project for Smithville. Having never spliced the first fiber in the field, we've done a few in a classroom and that's it. And so we go down there, we're both scared to death. We find another guy that has actually worked in the field and it's like, we're going to pay you to come work with us for a week just to get things going. And that guy showed up and we jumped into it, and that side of the business just exploded from there. We spent about 2 years in French Lick, hired a couple people along the way, and spliced up the whole south side of town of French Lick. And
those are the stories I'd love to hear, man. I think about when we had Jeremy and Shani on, and Jeremy made the comment of sometimes you just got to fake it till you make it.
That's exactly what we did. So, and I think Matt knew that, and I'm not sure Ruth Reedy did. Ruth Reedy is one of the sweetest ladies that's ever lived, but she would have probably been like, I don't think this is a good idea, Paul. But we got down there and we got it, and we worked with Reedy on that whole project, and it went really well. We had a few snags along the way. We found some of the fiber that was bad, and I think Matt and his group had to pull out about 14 miles of fiber that they had put in because it was a manufacturing flaw. So we got to do it twice. So we got lots of experience in doing that project. We got to splice everything twice and test it all, and it went really well. And since then, obviously, the Jackson County REMC project, been working on that for about 5 years with them now. Worked on Southeastern REMC, have worked with several carriers, Spectrum, we've worked with Time Warner, done some stuff, a little bit of stuff with Metronet. So, yeah, it's been a great jump for us. But that's how the fiber side of that business started, and I've grown it to we've got 6 or 7 people that full-time. That's all they do is the fiber side.
Well, that's a great story of how you got all in the fiber. I knew some of the REMC stuff. I knew you did that. But, man, when you talk IT, that's a broad subject to me. What all does NITEC do? And we talked about this a little bit before we went live. Is like I've seen you, like when my wife and I built our home, you came in, did all of our home security systems. You do all of our computer stuff. We order all of our computers and all of our software. We do my businesses through you. I know as the county surveyor, you're heavily involved in the things that go on over here with county government things. But there is such a wide range of things that NITEC does.
There really is. We've kind of tried to segment our business out. So we have the IT side of things, which we sell IT hardware, computers, servers, networking equipment, stuff of that nature. Do the support for all of that stuff. So under the IT umbrella of our business, I would say those things that I just mentioned fall into, as well as telephone systems. So we're into the voice over IP telephone systems and providing that. And we have several customers here locally, some in Columbus all the way to Indianapolis, running those phone systems. And that's been really good for us. But then we also have our low voltage side. So we have guys every day that they're out, pulling Cat 5, Cat 6 wire, pulling fiber inside of businesses, as well as doing camera systems, access control. Then we have the fiber side, which we just spoke about. So those guys are in outside plant fiber working for these carriers. Another thing that we got into here recently, Todd and I had always talked about security systems. Like you said, we'd done your house, but we'd done a little bit here and there, but really never dove into it. So we were thinking, we really want to get into this, but we're not sure how or when we're going to do this. Unfortunately, Dave McIntyre passed away that had McIntyre Alarm in Seymour. And his wife was looking for someone local to buy their business. And they had reached out to us, and we worked something out, and it's been really good. We've learned a lot. We're still growing that side of the business, so hopefully we'll see that continue to grow and boom for us.
Yeah, if there's any question, just give you a call, right?
Oh, absolutely. Pretty much if it has data that comes across it or you plug it into a wall. Yeah. That's kind of what we work on. And it's kind of been a double-edged sword for us. Being where we're at, halfway between Indianapolis and Louisville, a lot of people don't want to pay someone an hour to drive to Seymour or to Brownstown or to Bedford from one of those towns to work on something. So when they call, they're like, well, do you do this? And we're like, yeah, we do that. That's no problem. We'll do that. And we've not learned to say no very much.
Yeah, saying no is really hard.
It is.
That's the hardest thing I think I've ever had to do in business is say the word no.
We've just always kind of went with the motto of, we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
And we've been pretty successful at it. So we've had our failures like, most people have, but we've learned from it and
do you
been pretty successful.
Do you think, Paul, that some of the success of NITEC is because of, you talk about the team, but almost all your team is local people?
Absolutely.
And do you feel like that's been a huge success factor in the quality of the people locally that we have that maybe people in the bigger cities just aren't accustomed to? And they feel like maybe they're getting just a little bit more personal touch due to, not just the personalities, but the just people just care a little bit more. You feel like that's been a key to the success?
I think it really has. It helps foster that relationship. Most of our customers they're friends, not just our customer that we see Monday through Friday or on occasionally see them. But you know what? If we're out for dinner and we see these people, these are the people we're going to go sit down with. We're going to talk to them and spend time with them. And I think that's huge. I think it's huge for any business.
Man, it's some cool stuff. It's way over my head from a technology standpoint, but it's all really cool stuff.
Well, everything you do is way over my head, too. I mean, you're picking a point that's an eighth of an inch off from 14 miles away from, I could never, you came out and did stuff for us here recently when we moved, and it's just super impressive, everything you guys are able to do with the technology that you use.
Yeah, it's and I don't know how you're more technology based, but even in what we do, there's a lot of technology. I mean, it's changing fast, and if you don't stay on board with the latest technology, you can get left behind. Other businesses can pass you by in a hurry in the technology realm of things, but there's the technology side and there's the new age side, but then there's a lot of history to what we do. So I don't know if the IT stuff is, you have to know a lot about how things were done in the past to truly understand how to fix things and solve some of the problems going forward.
I really don't think that plays into it as much as your business, for sure. The technology changes so fast, especially with AI and everything coming on board now. The shift on how things are done today and how they'll be done maybe 1 or 2 years from now, I mean, we're all kind of up in the air on that because of all the AI growth. So I want to jump back to a job that we had you do for me.
Sure.
Todd and I had you come in and do a job at a factory for us.
Oh, yeah.
And you did a 3D survey inside of a building.
Yeah, so, inside a Toyota factory.
Yes. I mean, that you're picking points out that are not on the floor, but actually up in the air somewhere.
Yeah.
And that is just amazing to me. I think that was crazy.
Yeah. So let me tell you how that relates to other things that we've done. So we've done underground mine surveying. So to me, it was the same as being underground because the survey was on the roof. Everything was transferred to the ground, but then related back up to the top. And when you're in a mine surveying, that's how it is. Everything is in the roof, and you could be transferred down and then transferred back up. And so to us, it was just kind of the same mentality. But that was a really cool project. I was really thankful that you let us be a part of that because, surveying a lot of times is out running around people's yards, but surveying is also, it could be standing in a huge factory, and that's what it was. But yeah, that was a great job.
Yeah, I mean, so there's a technology bridge right there, between the surveying side and true, in factory technology. If I remember correctly, that was tied to some of the robots and positioning for those robots and the paths that they took throughout the plant. So, that was great stuff.
Yeah, and what we were doing is we were locating a pattern on the ceiling of these sensors that track these robots. And the accuracy of the pattern that was on the ceiling to track these robots had to be exact. And so, from my standpoint, it was hard to think about, I'm putting this on the ceiling and then now this is going to study where this robot goes to here and there. And they're taking all that data and trying to figure out a faster way, a more efficient way to do things. And that was wild. That was, to me, just blew my mind.
Yeah, that was certainly a really neat project for us and you. We've been fortunate enough to continue to work for Toyota. Got guys today heading up to East Chicago to their heavy-duty plant. They built some fork trucks up there that are big enough that, these are the things that pick up shipping containers and move them around, maybe 3 at a time. If you get on Google Earth and look at that facility, you can see the forks setting out beside the building. You don't have to zoom down very far to see them either. I mean, These things are huge.
Yeah.
So we got some guys going up to work there today. Have continued to do work for Toyota there in Wellsboro at material handling. It's been a great relationship there and definitely enjoy having them as a customer.
One of the things, another little entrepreneur side of you that I've also had the privilege to be a little bit a part in is you started buying some lots, building some houses here in town. And I want to give you a little bit of credit on this because I'm all about what can we do to make Brownstown better. we have a housing shortage. We have places that probably need to be tore down or cleaned up. Overall, we have a great town. But we need more people to take a vested interest in Brownstown and say, you know what, I'm going to take and I'm going to build some new housing and I'm going to do some of these things. And I know you've kind of started down that path a little bit as something new that you've been doing. And man, I give you a lot of credit for it. How's that going? What's kind of your thought process there?
It's going pretty well. Toby Polly, I know you know Toby very well, and he's been working with me on these, and he does a great job. Very personable guy, so not only can he build this house, he can also talk to people about selling this house.
Yeah.
And he's done a great job working, not necessarily for me. I would say our relationship is definitely more with each other than for each other. And we just want to keep going. You know, we had those lots back there kind of behind NITAC that were sitting vacant, and we just finished our third house back there, and actually yesterday got an accepted offer on that, so that was great. And as soon as we get this one closed out, we'll build the fourth one.
Oh, that's great.
And we're just going to try to keep going from there. One at a time is the plan right now.
Yeah, but all of that's making Brownstown better. Bringing better housing, it's making our town look better. So, I commend you on that. And also thanks for, letting us be a part of helping you out on some of that as well.
Oh, absolutely. There's a lot of folks here in town that, are downtown here recently, things that Connor's doing, and not just Connor, but the whole group of people that Connor has working with him on the Ewing Main Street programs, and especially Rock the Rhine, and some of the things they're going to be doing with that money from that it's great for our town. And it's not just great for our town, it's great for Jackson County.
I want to talk a little bit about your hobbies because it's not all business. It's not all work. Sometimes you got to take some time to enjoy your hobbies. I know you really enjoy golf, and you've been to some really cool places. I want to talk about that. You've been to some world-class golf courses.
I've been really lucky in that respect, that's for sure. Last year was probably one of those epic golf years that I'll never be able to recreate. To start with, a group of us went out to Payne Valley in Missouri and played the Tiger Woods design course out there, as well as a couple other just world-class courses out there, and it was amazing. Then, as you know, Todd's my business partner, and fortunate enough that I was invited to go along with his entire family, thank you, Tom Bollinger, to Pebble Beach last year. So we were able to play Pebble Beach and Spyglass and one of the other courses there on the peninsula, and just absolutely beautiful, amazing golf, hard courses. So you got to remember why you're there. Don't get frustrated playing golf there because they're difficult. So enjoy the moment. Enjoy what you're getting to look at. And it was wonderful. And we have that same stuff here. The Pete Dye course down in French Lick is just wonderful. Me and you have played there together. It's gorgeous. It's a great place to go play. Also, sometimes pretty hard. But you get up on top of that hill, you almost don't feel like you're in French Lick or in southern Indiana. It's just like you stepped into a different world when you get up there.
Yeah. I've come to the conclusion with my golf game of I no longer get frustrated, like I did maybe when I started, because I've come to the conclusion of that I'm not good enough to be that angry about my game. And so I've just learn to relax, and like you say, I take in the course, the camaraderie of playing with different guys, and I know you enjoy it, I enjoy it, but it's a good way to relax.
Oh, it is, and I'm certainly not good enough to get mad about playing, and I rarely get too upset about anything going on in the golf because, I may go par, birdie, and then I might throw a quadruple bogey up there. So I just got to kind of laugh at myself and let's move on. And we do a good job of making fun of each other out there whenever that happens. So.
We do, all in good fun.
Absolutely.
That's for sure. And you're a bourbon connoisseur and got a bourbon collection, and you and I talk a lot of bourbon. We've been to some bourbon events, and I know that's something you enjoy as well.
Absolutely. I collect more than I drink. I've got probably 200 to 300 bottles right now, ranging from, things that are just, that $30 bottle that tastes really good. And we've got some other bottles that are more valuable. I've never paid what they would go for on the market. I've been lucky enough that I found an auction / raffle site that I've been fortunate enough to win on. I know I've talked to you about that, and several people when I first started doing that, and it was like every time I look out there, you're winning something. So I had a really good hot streak right at the beginning, so I was able to build my collection that way. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun, and bourbon is a really hot thing right now. And over the last couple of years, it's popularity has grown. It's kind of like craft beer was for a while. It was a huge growing thing everywhere. Everyone was doing craft beer. And bourbon's kind of the same way right now. I'm sure maybe it'll run its course as well, and there'll be that next big thing. But I've enjoyed being able to do what I've done with it so far.
Yeah, there's so much cool stuff about bourbon that, it's more than just the bourbon. It's the how it's made, the process that's intriguing, but then all of the distilleries that I've been able to tour, and I know you've been on a bunch of them, and each one has their unique story. And I think that's what I like about bourbon, is I like the uniqueness of it.
What's the history? I know you're a big history guy, and the history of all of those places, while a lot of them are similar, but they're all unique as well. In the Prohibition time frame and everything that was going on with it then, it's really neat just to kind of look back and see that history.
Well, I brought you a bottle of bourbon today, and I don't want anybody going forward to think that they come on the over the line with Dan Bland, they're going to get a bottle of bourbon. But I was going through my cabinet, and I know you're a collector, and I thought I got to find one that I know Paul wouldn't have. So I found this Yellowstone family recipe that was a direct distiller bottle that I got down at Yellowstone at the distillery. And at the time, this was a distillery select. So I hope you don't have this one or have never tried it. So I want you to have this to say thanks for coming on the show.
That's great. We never tried it, and I certainly do not own it. So
yeah,
great.
And for a guy that's got 200 or 300 bottles of bourbon, I will say this: it was really hard to go through my small collection and try to find one that you didn't have. So I hope you enjoy it. But we had a couple bourbon here before we got started, and that's kind of been my pregame, is have a little glass of bourbon and kind of talk about what we're going to do on the podcast. So it's definitely been something that I've incorporated into just the first 5 or 6 episodes.
And both of the selections we had today were both very good.
If we're talking bourbon, let's talk about the one that we had, this War Eagle. And one of the stories, and this is a podcast about stories and different things, but one of the coolest thing about this War Eagle bourbon is it is distilled by Boundary Oak Distillery. And the cool thing about Boundary Oak Distillery is the whole... the basis of it came from the oak tree that was a boundary marker corner at Abe Lincoln's childhood farm.
So this is pure history and survey and everything.
And
this is Dan Bland bourbon.
Yeah, and so anytime you can combine bourbon and history of surveying together, I'm all about it.
Yeah.
They had that tree eventually died here, I want to say, 15, 20 years ago. And they took that oak tree, and a certain section of that oak tree, they made corks from it. And you could buy, there for a limited time, you could buy Boundary Oak bourbon that had the oak tree that was the property corner of that from Abraham Lincoln's childhood farm. So that was really cool. And again, that's what I like about some of these bourbons, man. They've got such unique stories to tell. But so then everything Boundary Oak does is related to either Abraham Lincoln or it's military related in some way. So,
well, that bottle that's a good drinking bourbon. We had a little sip of that before we started, and very smooth, a lot of flavor.
Yeah.
I'd recommend it to anybody if they're out and about and they see it somewhere. It's definitely worth picking up.
Yeah. People ask me all the time that are getting into bourbon. What was the bourbon that got it started for you, that you said, I like this. Because not everybody tastes bourbon and likes bourbon. Sometimes it's an acquired taste in people. It has to grow on people. But what was the bourbon that you had that it clicked? What was the it clicked for you bourbon?
So I remember, and it's not really bourbon, but I remember that, younger, that Crown Royal was the rave. That was the big thing. So I did like Crown Royal straight on some ice or on a rock, as well as a mixer. But probably one of the best bourbons that I drank starting out, and I'm honestly going to say this, you had something to do with this, was Eagle Rare. Because I remember one of the fundraisers we were doing, there was Eagle Rare that someone had brought and donated to the auction, and you were like, oh, I got to get that. That is great stuff. That's my favorite bourbon at the time. So I was like, well, I got to try that. So still like Eagle Rare. Always keep it in stock. So I would say that would have to be it.
Yeah, that was my go-to. I think Connor Barnett and I actually stumbled across that. And that was my major click of there was a bourbon that you found that you liked, and then away it went. So.
Yeah, and since then, I've had some other stuff. Some of the Bardstown bourbons that they have down there has been really good. The Discovery series has been a really good flavorful bourbon that they've done. Jeff Neal and myself we had a bet on who would become a grandfather first. And you would think it would be just the opposite of the way we bet, but whoever became the grandfather first had to buy a bottle of Pappy for the other person. So, Jeff and I had, through raffles and stuff, were able to get a bottle of Pappy. Neither one of us paid crazy money for it. So we've both had them setting, and, Jeff and Shannon became grandparents. And so we cracked open his bottle of Pappy and drank that. So that was a really nice bourbon to drink. So as we talked about earlier, Seth and Addie are going to be expecting. So we're going to have to crack mine open here, hopefully in November as well.
That's really cool. Great story. One of the main topics on every podcast, and I'm sure you've heard them or listened to the flow of these things, but this is a Brownstown podcast. This is a Jackson County podcast, and really that's what I want it to be. And I want people to get to know the people of Brownstown and Jackson County a little bit better. And I feel like we've done that. I feel like we did a really good job. And hopefully people will listen to this and say, man, I feel like I know Paul better now. And maybe somebody will run into you and say, hey, listen to the podcast and feel like they know you a little bit better. But the main question I always ask people is, what is it about Brownstown that makes it so special? What is it about Jackson County that's just a little bit different? And what makes Jackson County special to Paul Borden?
I think we're a great southern Indiana area. This is more tied to Brownstown. This is something Leanne and I have always talked about, is growing up here. We moved down here when Cole was 4. So, that's been 24 years ago. Moving down here from Seymour, and immediately Cole starts, into sports. We made tons of friends at the park and everything with Cole playing baseball. And, it's a place that you could go let your kid play in the park. And everyone there, if something was going on, there was 100 people there that knew who your kid was, and that shouldn't be going on. So, people here take care of each other, and I think that's a wonderful thing. And that kind of leads into something we talked about earlier. In 2011, Leanne was diagnosed with cancer, and we weren't really sure where things were going to go. A lot of local people really stepped up, had a fundraiser. You did the auctioneering for the fund, or the fundraiser, and it was great. We had a great time, but everyone came together. Leanne was able to beat it. We're 14 years later now. Things are going great. Been very fortunate in that respect, but since then, we've been a part of a lot of those things, and just seeing that grow and grow. And the money that we got from that was crazy at the time. We're like, I can't believe that people gave us this much money. Very humbling. And to see being part of those since then, and just seeing those numbers increase, it's been crazy.
Yeah, it seems like everybody that I talk to when I ask that question, they talk about the people. It's all about the people, man.
It is.
We can talk about the size of the town, or what we have in the town, or what we don't have in the town. But at the end of the day, it's the people here in Jackson County that make it just a little bit different. I've said this many times, and maybe sometimes people have read some of my surveying adventures, but I will tell you this, Paul, people truly are different from community to community. You can drive 30 miles from here and in any direction and come up with a little bit different community.
Absolutely. I think that, we've talked about sports a lot, and as Brownstown here, being a small school, we've been very fortunate in our sporting endeavors from the high school and everything, and not just competing against other schools, but competing against all schools throughout the state, regardless of size. The basketball program's been great. The football program's been great. We've had some really good success here with the baseball program the last few years. Sending a lot of kids to go play college baseball has been great. Girls programs have been wonderful. Coach Shade has done a crazy good job with the volleyball program for all the years she's been there. I know my wife coached with her for several years there, and I don't remember how many, 4 or 5 years in a row we're going to the state championship. It almost becomes expected. I have a friend that lives in Valparaiso, and I'm like, yeah, we got beaten the state championship again by Muncie Burris. And she's like, again, that's a real problem to have. We're lucky if we win sectional, it's a wonderful thing. Or if we make it out of regional, it's a great thing. Think about the experiences you guys have that your kids are just used to. And I was like, well, you know what? And you look at it from that perspective. But our sports program has been great for our community, and everyone here is involved in it. They're all at the games. You go to Elm Street and you see hundreds of people on the outside, hundreds of people on the inside. We pack the pit for basketball. It's just a great experience.
Yeah, our sports is directly tied to our community support. I'm a firm believer in that. We have great coaches. Don't get me wrong. We have great coaches in every sport. We do. But we couldn't do it without the community support that we have. It's different.
I agree. It's I would say it's unlike many communities in the state of Indiana and probably the country.
Yeah. I want Brownstown and Jackson County to stay small, but I think eventually people are going to figure it out.
Yeah.
There's this little place that maybe they should be. I know we do a lot of work in Brown County, and it's kind of got a Mayberry-esque feeling to a lot of people from Chicago, and there's been a big movement of people down. And I always wonder if that'll ever happen here.
I would say it probably will. The town's going to continue to grow. A lot of people complain, well, we don't have this or we don't have that, but is that a bad thing? Maybe it's not a bad thing that we don't have a bunch of, mainstream, countrywide retail or all the restaurants and everything, because we have some great local restaurants that, I know Tanya and Mason talked about just being thankful for the people that come in, and Mason thanking everybody, and he's right. He does every day.
Yeah.
We have a lot of businesses like that. Family Drug, for example, the Butt family, People's Bank, and the way that those businesses operate and take care of their customers is just amazing.
Well, you can walk into this little hardware store down here.
Absolutely.
And not only does it feel like to some degree you just went back in time, but you get a real sense of the town, and you get a real sense of what small business in this town is like in a hurry.
You walk in there and Kim, do you have this random part that I'm looking for? Yeah, that's in the back. Hang on a second. Yeah. And they have it. It's great. And you're exactly right. You walk in that and it's like walking into history. I mean, just that building itself and the old floors and some of the decorations and stuff of old tools and everything that they have hanging up. Just a great experience.
Yeah, and that's a uniqueness that you just don't get in bigger communities.
Absolutely.
The box stores, they walk into the Home Depot and walk up and down aisles. So, yeah, it's definitely unique. Paul, thanks for being on the show. I've really enjoyed you being on. We've talked about a lot of different things. I hope people that listen to this will enjoy this as much as I have. When people listen to this podcast, will know Paul Borden a little bit better, and that was my goal all along.
Well, I really appreciate you having me on, Dan. Hopefully my ramblings weren't too crazy and people are able to follow along. And I hope you're right. I hope that if someone sees me out and they didn't know something about me, that they stop and say, hey, I learned this about you. That's great. And I know that everyone appreciates you doing this as well. I think having, all of our local people on here, it's just wonderful. I've listened to the podcast and learned things about people that I didn't know. And it's a great experience.
Well, I appreciate you listening. I get a lot of text. People, after an episode comes out, they'll mention certain things. We talked before I turned the recorder on about little things like, what are Bugle Boy jeans from Tanya? And,
there you go.
In Mason's episode, just little things that people pick up. And I get a lot of text, or I'll run into people somewhere and they'll tell me that they're listening. And it makes me feel that maybe this thing isn't so crazy after all. This little hobby that I picked up isn't so crazy.
Well, I think you're doing a great job. I think the setup you have here is great. We've got nice views out the windows tonight looking at downtown Brownstown, so that's great as well.
Yeah. Another shout out to Greg Deck for letting us use the space and giving this little studio here and giving me the opportunity to put this little podcast out.
All right. Well, thanks a lot, Dan, and look forward to hearing the heavily edited version, and hope you have a great night.
All right, buddy. I will see you on the golf course tomorrow night.
You betcha.
All right. Take care.
I feel like I just rambled sometimes. Like we were down this path and we were here and then we were here.
You really didn't. It was great. Had a good flow to it. I think it went really well. I didn't drink enough bourbon throughout it. I usually take a few time out, take a few sips, but I didn't do that.
Yeah, we didn't drink a whole lot.
'Cause it takes a man with some patience and a famous reputation for running long and hard both days